We're about to begin the first session of this second morning. So first of all, I'd like to welcome you all back in Aria Science Park. I hope those of you who were present last evening enjoyed the dinner. I certainly found it very convivial and interesting and scintillating discussions. I remind everybody that we're going to have some more intense presentations and discussions, so I hope everyone's wide awake. You should at least be on your third coffee by now. But we'll be having a coffee break at 10:45, but before that we have another interesting session for you, which will be moderated by Luigi Amati, the co-founder of the Meta Group, who has, I have to say, a certain amount of experience in funding ventures of various types. So he's perfectly qualified to moderate this session in the workshop on proof of concept. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Luigi and wish you all a very good and productive day. Luigi.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Stephen, and thanks to Aria Science Park for having me here, and JRC. And good morning to everybody. So we kick off our session, first session in the morning, about the regional initiatives with some examples and possible models for proof of concept funds. First, some information about the speakers. We have some slight changes. Yula Diarova from Ernst & Young couldn't make it this morning. She's apologizing, but she has sent her presentation, so I'm sure this will be made available to all of you about the standpoint of Ernst & Young on proof of concept. And we also have a switch in the presenters on the case of Bulgaria. We're actually very pleased to have with us today Professor Albena Wutsova of the Sofia University, which will be telling us about the technology transfer and regional innovation in Bulgaria. And Jordan Zarev, that was with us until last night, had a little problem this morning, so he's also not with us, but nothing serious. So without any further delay, I would like now to give the floor to Mladen Stojanovic, that will tell us about the technology transfer facility of the Innovation Fund from Serbia. Mladen, the floor is yours. I think you can take as you wish. I think it's a free choice.
Thank you, Luigi. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mladen Stojanovic. I'm coming from the Innovation Fund of Serbia, where I work as a technology transfer coordinator. So today I want to talk a little about the experiences the Innovation Fund had by implementing the projects, innovation projects and programs specifically targeting public R&D institutions and private sector SMEs. So I'll more focus on the public sector, and I'll try to relate that to the proof of concept activities, and at the end, hopefully, try to answer to some of the questions Lisa actually gave us yesterday as a sort of assignment, hoping to provoke or initiate the discussion on those issues. So, as I said, the Innovation Fund targets both private sector companies with its programs and public sector R&D institutions, faculties, and institutes. Speaking about the Serbian context and proof of concept activities, I must also mention projects from the Ministry of Education, Science and Technological Development, who in fact finance projects in the area of technological development that target proof of concept activities. But I'm mentioning this just as a reference, since I will mainly talk about the programs of the Innovation Fund. Strategically speaking, the Innovation Fund is the institution with the mandate to contribute to overall development of the innovation in the country. Through, on one side, providing funding for innovation activities through its programs, and on the other hand, making linkages between private sector industry and R&D institutions. So this is a sort of a strategy of the Innovation Fund. Operationally, we actually operate through 4 distinct programs. We have mini grants program for startups, matching grants for somewhat larger companies. We have what we call a collaborative grant scheme, which is actually a program for joint R&D projects between private sector SMEs and public R&D. And we have technology transfer facility. This is a program that I am running, and I will talk a bit more about experiences, which is actually a combination of a technical assistance and funding with the aim to commercialize inventions coming from public sector R&D institutions. I have to say that all the programs Innovation Fund is implementing allow for proof of concept type of activities, but none of them is specifically designed to meet the needs, let's say, of the market. In fact, all programs welcome projects that are closer to the market, further up the technology readiness scale. So we more focus on prototyping, development of MVPs, and even higher levels of technology readiness. So it wouldn't be fair to say that we are funding proof of concept activities. They may come as eligible costs, but they mainly happen in the field of IT, where proof of concept, prototyping, and MVP are very closely related, and it's difficult to distinguish between them. So, few words about the technology transfer facility. As I said, it's a combination of an expert support and small funding for the researchers coming from public sector R&D institutions. We started this program a bit less than a year and a half, and we do have certain, limited experiences, and I will tell you a little more about it. So far, we received formally about 20 applications for funding and support. About half of those applications have been awarded, and recently we had the first licensing deal coming out from this pipeline. I must admit that the first year of the operation was very difficult. It was very little traction. We were struggling to fill in the pipeline, and actually we identified 2 specific problems in that sense. One was that the proposals coming to us were in a very early stage of development. So it needed, let's say, a sort of proof of concept type of activities and funding. And the other one was related to transactional support. What I mean to say is that once the project exhausts its funding, which is not big, it's between 10 and 20,000 euros, there was no follow-on support to continue. So basically, unless there is a private sector partner who wants to take the project and bring it to the market, the project will probably die. So our idea was at the beginning of this year to introduce some sort of proof of concept activities within the program itself. Then we heard that the JRC is preparing this initiative, so we halted a bit and waited to see if we can take advantage of this initiative. But on the other hand, on the transactional support, recently we modified a bit the program and allowed for more funding. So now we are offering grants for up to 50,000 euros, but with the condition that there is an interested commercial partner who would like to co-finance at least 30% of the costs. So this is how we evaluate this genuine interest of the private partner. So company is not obliged to take a license or to commercialize technology, but if they want to do a joint research, joint project with the researcher, they have to co-finance. And actually, I don't want to talk further about what we do. I think this is enough as a sort of background for you. What I would like to do, as I said in the beginning, is to try to offer a couple of answers to some of the questions Lisa asked today. And even though I know that it probably represents a sort of narrow vision of the Innovation Fund, I hope this can be a starting point for a good discussion. So when we are talking about something what we call now the proof of concept scheme for the Western Balkans, for us it is extremely important to integrate that scheme in our existing programs. So we wouldn't, I mean, yesterday someone asked a question, is it going to be a one-time program, what about sustainability? This is exactly the point that I want to make. So for us, sustainability is very important. So we want to connect this program and to try to use the exit results from the proof of concept scheme for our technology transfer program. I mean, further funding could be arranged through JRC or through other means, but this is very important for us. Speaking of public and private proof of concept programs, I mean, Croatia had both. For us, at this point, it's more important to focus on the public sector R&D institutions. The reason why we are not so keen maybe to have a proof of concept private is the fact that we are already running two programs, and specifically mini grants program is very similar to what could be the private proof of concept. And for us it is a bit inconvenient to first communicate the differences between, because they are very, very small. And it is going to be a sort of competing program in our own portfolio. So I said it is a bit a narrow vision from our side, but I'm speaking it out loud. I mean, regarding the financing, I mean, 20 to 50K. Someone mentioned that this is something that we are thinking about right now is fine. Co-financing, our experiences are with co-financing, especially with the public sector R&D, are not so good. I would say it would be very difficult to ask from faculties and research institutes to co-finance part of the costs. Regarding cooperation within the Western Balkans, I would like to stress that we are very happy if we can use experiences from Croatia, for instance, who already run this program. But we are also happy to share what we know and what we learned so far in the last 10 years implementing our programs with other countries. So we are open to that, and I want to stress that. And Speaking about evaluation, I mean, our experience is that evaluation is very important, is critical, especially for a sort of status that we have. I mean, we built a relatively solid reputation as, mostly because we had outsourced our evaluation of the projects to outside experts, and I think today companies who apply for our programs know that the evaluation will be transparent, impartial, and I would say that if we are running the program for the whole region, evaluation should be centralized. This is our something that we want to point out, and in the end, I would like to thank you all for listening, and I hope that we can start a discussion based on this and based on what was said yesterday. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mladen. I think that if there is one burning question, we can take it now, and possibly we will have a little time for the discussion at the end of the session. Any question right now? No? Let me just ask you a quick one, maybe. Please, yes.
Is there any sort of coaching you do? I mean, how do you to help the proposal during the course of the project?
So the question is for those that are at the back of the room, is that if there is any coaching in this program?
We do not offer formal trainings, if this is your question, but we are what we try to do is to set up a program, to start working with real life problems, and in that way help both ETOs and researchers coming to us to understand what are the problems and how we can solve them. So that's our approach in the Technology Transfer Facility program, at least.
My quick question was more about the deal flow. As I understand, you were mentioning that maybe this is not so intense as in other measures, and I would be interested to understand what are the bottlenecks. I mean, is really that there is a lack of projects, or is that still the culture of coming to a proof of concept fund is not well developed?
Well, I would maybe point out two things. One is exactly what you said, that research community is not used to that kind of approach. I mean, typical research projects are you write a proposal, you get a grant, you do it, and that's it. Here we give grant with the idea to close the transaction in some time frame of a year or two. The second thing is that when we do evaluation, we start with assessing ownership. And this is again something new. Normally, ownership is not an issue in research projects, and I think especially in the Western Balkans, there is this issue of loosely integrated university, where you have separate public entities on the level of the universities, of the level of faculties, institutes, and it's actually there are more than two parties who always claim part or the full ownership of whatever is produced, either as a background IP or foreground. So that's one of the problems that is actually stopping, I think, higher number of applications.
Okay, thanks a lot, Mladen. So our next speaker is Mislav Jurisic, advisor of the Croatian Agency for SMEs, Innovation and Investments, Hamag Bicro, and he will present the experience of the agency in proof of concept. And Mislav, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here. This is my first time in Trieste by business. So I will try to translate to you some of the experiences we had with proof of concept that BICRO and HAMAG BICRO have been running since 2010 through Science and Technology Project and the Science and Technology Project 2, financed by the loan of the World Bank through the Ministry of Science. So apart from my own personal reflections and experiences that I had just in some parts of the process of proof of concept, like selection process in the last call, we here have also some collective experiences. So with me it's my colleague Svetlana Bušić, who is a program manager of PoC for quite a long time. So you can, Svetlana, please wave you. You can use her presence also later in the breaks, and she is a well of knowledge regarding the PoC and operational issues. Also, we have here Dalibor experiences, who led this initiative while being in BICRO. And also there are colleagues from World Bank and from Ministry of Science. So there is, I mentioned stakeholders and different actors because the PoC has actually grown up as a need in the ecosystem that at that time was developing, and I think that is a very important issue. So I read the working paper and I tried to put the presentation to reflect some of the things I have seen there. So one of the, in my opinion, very important issue is in the context in which you have a need for a certain program, whether it is proof of concept or anything else. So if we talk about times when proof of concept, you don't have to try to read the pictures, it is just to distract you a little bit. So the important thing is that there was a certain context at that time during the first Science and Technology Project, where BICRO not only, in my opinion, worked on certain programs, but the strategy and the idea was, from one side, to build the innovation infrastructure, so the ecosystem, the support organizations, and from the other side, provide enough resources, focused resources that will target certain phases of innovation process, and this is where PoC program came into. Before PoC started, BICRO already had two programs, program RASM, which was a conditional loan program, focusing on developing new products for startups and small and medium-sized enterprises, and program IRCRO, which was more focused on initiating and starting collaborations between companies and research institutions. But both programs more or less targeted this later part, let's say, of development, and as Dalibor mentioned yesterday, STP project helped develop certain business support organizations, and at some point there was a need to see how to continue and develop this ecosystem. So the program came handy to fill this gap. Nowadays we have certain different context. We still have a PoC program financed through STP, Science and Technology Project 2, so also through the loan of the World Bank, but we can say it's from the national budget if we compare to structural funds. Now we have situation of structural funds where both the strategy, the concept for operational program is moved on some different level. So I see at the time of start of PoC, BICRO more involved in both policy and implementation, and now we are implementation body. Yeah? So programs are run and called are launched by ministries, and HAMAG BICRO is basically operationally running, monitoring, and participating in some parts of selection process. And with this huge amount of money coming into through ERDF, we basically have like just for business R&D there is a scheme of 205 million euros. So if you compare to 7 million euros that we financed through POC in 6 calls, you can see the relations. And we have very big schemes. So schemes, this in orange, this is all you need to see the colors. So in orange on the left, on the right side, this is a scheme targeting business R&D, and it covers TRL from 1 to 8. Maximum amount is 7.5 million euros. So basically you, in a way, compete with this approach that is more wider, not focused. It covers POC, like my previous speaker mentioned. You can have it in different programs, but with POC we really believe it is important to target it, and I will move on forward and make some conclusion later on. So I think the context is very important, whatever you do, in my opinion, now. Although, as our host yesterday mentioned, it is always about adoption, taking best practices, adapting, and this is what we are trying to do in POC. Every call has something new, but it is important to have in mind what you want to do in 5 years, because this is a very good generator of pipeline. Very small, very short, and you generate hundred of projects, which are later some kind of topic for private investor, for public investment, and so on. So our POC has 3 main activities which we finance. It is developing functional prototype, technical demonstration, and IP check, IP protection. And the applicant has to finance at least one of these 2, functional prototype or technical demonstration. He can also use the resources to do some market analysis, prepare commercial plan, but this is limited to 10%. The funding is between approximately 5 and 50,000 euro. The project duration is up to 12 months, and applicants can be physical persons, but if they get through contracting, they have to set up their own business. Applicants are SMEs and public research organizations, so they are all together in one bunch. They are evaluated in the same way, and they are ranked together. So there is no division of budget between public and private. There were some thoughts about this, but we never actually did this. The intensity of financing is 60% for medium, 70% for small, and 90% for public R&D organization. So the idea is really to cover this gap. To companies and researchers need to state in their application what is the problem that they are solving, what is the solution, and basically the idea is to have projects that have some technical risk, so there is no certainty that the solution that they are proposing is going to work. So we are basically around TRL 3 and 4 playing with the project. Very important, and probably the key of the implementation of proof of concept in Croatia is this concept of business support organization acting as an extension hand to agency. They play both, I would say, police and friend role. They are our partners, and they participate basically in the whole process. So we have a 2-stage selection process, pre-application, which are much shorter, and full application. Pre-applications and communication before the applicant provide their application are done by our partners in the business support organizations, and they do this filter in pre-application. So they select who has the opportunity to write full application. And applicants can only apply through these support organizations, not through HAMAG BICRO. After they are selected, the support organizations provide support in writing full applications. They do just administrative checks so that all documents are there, and then the full applications come to us, and we do quality evaluation with external evaluators with the specificity that evaluators or applicants are confronted with two external evaluators. They present shortly, they have discussion, and then without the applicant, evaluators discuss together with, let's say, certain president of the committee from HAMAG BICRO, and they finalize the marks. So this is something also I think it's very important. Key selection criteria are just three. We just looked with Svetlana yesterday a little bit at the history and what I mentioned about adoption adaptation. We used to have many more criteria, but we focused the quality criteria on quality evaluation criteria just on these three. So level of innovation, what problem you are solving, what is the current way of solving this problem, are you new, how you are new, can you protect these things, this kind of things, questions. What is the commercial potential of this problem you are solving and your solution, and overall quality including team, who are there all resources there that they need to be, is the plan well elaborated, are the risks covered, and so on. We used to have also previously financial part in the mark, but we have concluded that with time, I think in POC 6 we excluded this part from the overall mark. So we check, of course, financial things and whether the applicant has enough resources, but we do not include this in the overall mark. Just historically, so we had 6 POCs. In 2010 we had 2, 2011 1, 2012, 2013, and the last was end of 2015, beginning 2016. So you see we started from 21 contracted projects, we now had 62 in the last call, and the overall grant amount in these 6 calls is 7 million euro, while total value of projects was 11 million euro. 2 years ago, all this is good, but it is also one thing I want you to think about and remember is really parallelly with calls and with running the program, we really need to get hold on what we are getting out of it. So 2 years ago we tried to do some very in-depth questionnaire with previous beneficiaries. We asked about 160 projects from the first 5 calls. We got very good response rate, and we asked them things about what happened at the end of the project. So we were looking at just rechecking the private contribution, what they generated at the end of the project, what kind of knowledge, what were the other results that were not planned. Then we looked in this questionnaire 2 years after the end of the project, what has happened, whether they continue working on this project, did they invest more money, did they get money from the other programs for investors, did they manage to launch the project, did they increase cooperation, because we see, although the partner is not formally eligible to receive funds through the POC, the partner is possible, he formally can be part of the project, but with his own basically contribution of time and work. And we see these partnerships developing within POCs, whether we want them or not. And we look at impacts 3-4 years after the end of the project, whether how the income of the companies grew, the profitability, the percentage of sales of innovative products. So we want to see what has happened with public research projects and so on. We develop a lot of indicators. There is no time to go into this in depth, but just few key messages is that we see that majority of projects, around 60%, continued with their development. Out of all these projects, 37 projects developed 74 applications for new programs, and their success rate was quite high, like 45%. I must admit and say that the public research project had a little bit more success, and they managed to attract more money than they received. So if you look overall, it's like 3-4 times more. And we, so based on this concept and further development, 26 products have been at that time, so 2 years ago, up to 2 years ago were launched. We already had some, I think, up to 5 million euro in total sales at that point. But we see a lot of knowledge generated, which I think it's one of the most important output of PoC. So knowledge generated, whether this is positive or negative, but it is something new that drives the beneficiary toward. And then you have this ecosystem pushing them to do something with it. And what is also important, new capacities and capabilities were developed, and we see, I will not read the details, you can do it later, but we can see that at least for SME, because we have data for them, we see growth in sales, we see growth quite high, we see growth in expenditure, and we see growth in share of expenditure in R&D compared to sales over 3 years after the project ended. Detailed data are on these slides, and you will look at it later. So these are all indicators. You can read it, I promise you. They are all indicators that we calculated and collected. This was our first attempt to play with ex-post evaluation internally, so it's not great. But so to conclude, there are many things to say, but PoC is a very good knowledge development tool, in my opinion. Not only the knowledge that is generated in the project by in technology terms, but the knowledge between people. So the interaction, in our opinion, is very important between beneficiary and the business support organization, because they are their partner in really bringing this thing to the market. Also, interaction between evaluators at the beginning with applicant is important. We are now doing some tests in the PoC 6. We want to put this on the next level, and at the end of the, because we see people saying, okay, the proof of concept has been successful, but we want to provide some value added and really see, is this really happened, and what can be done to provide some support to the beneficiary after the project has ended. So we will employ the evaluators who evaluated the project in the beginning to check the technical result of the project in the end, not with intention to say to the beneficiary, oh, you were bad, and punish him. So it is not the intention. The intention is to really see what has happened. Did they plan well the risks? What can be done further to give them ideas for further development, commercialization, things like that. We see additionality in terms of money invested afterwards. Very important, in our opinion, is this game between public and private. It is, in a way, a competition between them. We see consistently public projects getting higher marks on innovation potential, and of course businesses getting higher marks on commercial potential. And this is somehow, we see a tool, a way to really bring them both up on these two criteria. So we see a big difference in the way public researchers present their projects. Let's say, in at least my experience was PoC 5 and 6, so we could see, I personally saw a difference in the way they present the commercial potential, in the way that they talk with businesses, with markets before they presented their idea. So something positive is happening in this sense. It is a great tool for pipeline creation. It's very inexpensive in creating pipeline, and you can really fast. So in the last, you can very quickly create a pipeline. Last call was 19 million kuna, so 2.6 million euros, 62 projects. I think this is worth exercise worth trying. Very important notion is the innovation ecosystem, because the beneficiaries are otherwise left alone. Especially this is true for public research part. I took already too much time, so I will finish. But we try pushing the limits a little bit with public research projects. In terms, we had a program for TTOs. It is something that yesterday presenter mentioned from Scotland. This thing that you have to have some other champion getting the project and running forward with it. We try to put TTO's offices in this position. We see this struggle, but we need to be persistent. Yeah, this is not a slow process of turning the mindset and culture, and really we don't need to push professors to be, if they don't want to be business managers. Yeah, and the most important thing I want to finish is continuity. So all these exercises, I think, are not worth doing just once or 1 year or 2 years. This is something you just need to produce for a long time to get. And you see by numbers I show, I mean, you don't see the result in 2 years of the POC. Maybe you would if you finance only ICT projects, but otherwise you need at least 5. Yeah, at least 5 years, I think. Thank you very much, and I'm sorry I took a little bit more time, but me and Svetlana are here and ready to answer your questions. Thank you.
Indeed, thank you very much, Mislav. A very comprehensive presentation, and I think we all got a good understanding of the proof of concept fund in Croatia. You took a little bit more time, but I think it was worth, and we have one less speaker, so we have a little bit more time. Any one burning question? 2. So, Elena first. Let me just. So the question is about the 40 patents, where they are national or PCT or European type of applications.
But I think it's like at least half is PCT. Yeah, we take consideration in the evaluation about this, but you cannot, you know, you can't force some things. We see projects where people promise PCT and at the end they gave up for this or that reason. But yeah, we try to. We see the development in this area.
And one more question.
You said during the presentation that the partner organizations play a very crucial role in the program. So I would like to know which kind of agreement do you have with the partner organization?
So the question is about the agreement on partner organization.
Yeah, the role depends on the project, but we see that on many projects, both private and public, we see this relation, and they have to supply their agreement when they apply. No, I think, but you ask about our partners or partners of, the business support. Okay, sorry, I thought you are. Yeah, we have agreement with them, and if the project is monitored well, and at the end of monitoring, the conclusion is that all money was spent properly, and the project completed according to plan, then they get 5%. Of the value of the project.
The public ones.
Yes.
We have a last question.
I think you asked about companies.
From Giancarlo.
There are 2 parallel programs. One for SME of more than 250 euro, which funds funds TL1 to TL8, and then you have a proof of concept. How, what is SME doing? Why should go to the proof of concept with the other program?
So the question is about the two parallel programs.
Thank you for your question. If you want me to answer, it will take a lot of time. So you have on the one, this is the question of national investments and structural funds investments, overall strategy. And you know, we have from one side the STP project, so financed by the loan of the World Bank, which is, let's say, I will not say dying out, but it's normal going to its end. So POC, at least for now, we don't have plans for new calls. We are trying to do something about it. On the other hand, we have all this big structure in the structure funds constructed by ministries, and which has the agenda of operational program, and within operational program they set this kind of programs that cover everything. My personal opinion is this is done, you please enter any time, but this is done in with intent to spend as much money as possible, you know. And with the programs that we had from the World Bank, we try really to you know, like a tailor-made, and these two things don't work together. Yeah.
Okay.
At least for now.
We might take a few minutes for, you know, to the coffee break, I'm afraid, but I also have one burning question myself. You mentioned that there were 28 products out of all 26 or 28. Is there any, let's say, common success pattern that you've seen in the project that reached the level of products or not?
You mean like,
I mean, were they evaluated higher at the beginning? Were they having, I don't know, more private support, or I don't know, was it a specific sector?
We see definitely private sector. The difference between private and public sector, to be honest, in terms of what we see commercialized, it's this. Yeah. So we see ICT sector very fast, because although they I mean, we all understand it, yes, so there is no need to explain the ICT sector. This is some 40%, let's say. We ask around 80 beneficiaries from private sector. We get 80% response rate, so it's around half, 40-45% to launch the project, yeah. So, yeah.
Very good. So, thanks very much again. Without further delay, I will now leave the floor to Jelena Petrovic from the Science and Technology Park of Serbia, and she will tell us about the activity of the park.
Thank you. So first of all, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting us to share the experience in this phase, let's say, proof of concept development. Basically, as you had the opportunity maybe to hear during the previous conferences organized by GRC, as Science Technology Park Belgrade is a young organization, so established 2 years ago, based on the experience of the business incubator that basically supported establishment and development of more than 70 companies during 8 years period. We were established in the partnership of the government, our line Ministry of Education, Science and Technology Development, City of Belgrade and University of Belgrade, with the idea to create an environment where companies can grow much faster. So basically this is some update from the, let's say, our last presentation. So we work with 56 companies members, out of which 30 are startup companies, more than 400 employees. We develop 4 business support programs, and basically part of our network are also companies that are alumni incubator companies. So in our, let's say, network, we have now around 100 companies. So what we would like to say at the beginning, and what we believe it's very important to say when we talk about the region and innovation, is that there is a great innovation potential, and that we need only tools and ways how to release this potential and to make it useful in the market. So here in this picture, you can see one of the products of our company. So it's a snow simulator for ski and snowboarding. Basically, this product was developed, produced, and sold to one ski resort now in France. So this is one of the examples how actual innovation can be developed and commercialized in our region. And what we do is to help these companies to pass through all these stages from the development until the market more easily by providing them infrastructure and business support services. So, of course, as we discussed these days, like from ideas to successful business, there are many obstacles, and these obstacles could be perceived from the macro level. As we discussed, long-term commitment is one of the, let's say, biggest obstacles when it comes to policies and the support that is being given during the years. Of course, lack of investment in R&D, all these things are kind of a baseline or the input that need to be developed in order to have all these phases further on successful. So definitely legislation and legislative framework. Yesterday we heard there's an example from Scotland and how some of the rules of the universities about the ownership of IP can actually impede other phases of commercialization to be developed. Of course, strategic mindset, this is very important, especially when it comes to innovations and teams coming from the university and the institutes. Of course, when it comes to micro level, there is definitely lack of skills and knowledge from the teams coming not only from the institutes, but in general, teams that are having innovations, some specific skills, of course, unrealistic expectations when it comes to further development in the timeline when the company can be developed actually. So basically, one of the business support programs that we developed is basically connected to, can be related also to the proof of concept phase. We developed this business support program in the partnership with Technology Park Ljubljana, which experience was very important for us. So basically what do is we lead teams and companies through all the stages of the lean development that we use. What we perceived as the biggest issue, let's say, is these kind of questions related to the customers. So teams or the companies, spin-offs coming from the institutes, it's very difficult for them to not only define, but to reach and communicate to potential customers. So the role of the Science Technology Park and the business support institutions, which was just touched a bit previously by my colleague from Croatia, is extremely important. So we are not only talking about how to get some money, but what is necessary to be done and what kind of questions we need to answer in order to write a convincing applications and what to do in the next stages. So what we saw is that basically the teams or the companies that have some idea, they need support from the beginning. So how to prepare the application, how to pass these first steps in order to develop their ideas further, to validate it on the market, and then then on the implementation phase and as well as on the follow-up. As we saw, there are not many tools existing, so it's very important that even at the beginning we can somehow foresee what are the next stages and how to help companies to develop even further. So basically, we are, with our program, trying to cover all these areas which are important to write a convincing application and then to develop the business model that is necessary in order to pass these first stages successfully. So the proof of concept phase is very important. It's the beginning, and if done correctly, then it can influence all other stages more. So I will just conclude that, of course, we have very good cooperation with the Innovation Fund, and what we believe is that financing should be just part of the full business support package. So the thing that is mentioned about coaching and support, so we provide workshops, training, specific advisory, and mentorship as well. So some things can be quite easily managed if there are proper mentors, some people that can get companies in touch with the market more easily. And basically we believe that the projects would be more sustainable, we have bigger impact if these two, let's say, elements, financing and the business support, can work together more closely, and that the synergy is very important than doing it, let's say, separately. And in general, what basically we would like to do is to make these kind of programs to have bigger impact, so in all stages of development. And we believe that the role of the business support institutions is very big, and I approve, and I am glad to hear the experiences from Croatia, where there are partnerships between these yes, two elements. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jelena. Any quick question? Well, I still have also one question to you. You have this Lean Startup Center, as I understood. Are you also already organizing or plan to organize events and activities that are also engaging maybe the private sectors, investors, or is still too much of an early phase?
Well, yes, actually we are planning one such an event. It will happen at the beginning of December. So we are, I hope this is on, yes. So yes, this is one of the events that we are organizing. We already organized something similar previously, so we are definitely interested to cooperate with all the key, let's say, elements, including investors, to yes, develop the innovation ecosystem in Serbia.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, one other question from Giancarlo. Thanks.
It's impressive because every month the number of companies increase. So, but where are these companies coming from? Are also coming from other Western Balkan countries, or they're mainly Serbian or outside companies?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we are basically working with two groups of companies. So startup companies, as I said, out of these 56, more than 30 are startups. So these are teams coming all from the university, or let's say institutes, when I say university, students, etc. And we have other part of companies, more than 20, that are growing SMEs. Part of them, 14 are R&D centers of foreign companies. So we have companies from Italy, from Switzerland, from Germany, etc. And this is very important to create the ecosystem, and an exchange of knowledge and experience can also happen. And this is our pool also of potential mentors, and in general the exchange is much more fruitful like that. Welcome.
Okay, thank you again very much. So now we are very pleased to have as our last speaker Professor Vucova, that will be telling us from Sofia University, that will be illustrating to us the technology transfer and regional innovation landscape in Bulgaria. So, Professor Vucova, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. I promise not to appear the third time on the desk. Concerning our eco-innovation system, I could say that we operate with 4 instruments. There are a National Innovation Fund, National Research Fund, 2 OP programs, competitiveness and innovation, and of course new financial instruments. But existing example for the proof of concepts are 3 of them. To some extent, 1 of them, I'll mention which of them is it, but starting with National Innovation Funds, also old OP program, it was innovation program, competitiveness program, and the new issue of OP program, it's competitiveness program, because we are for the moment in the second programming period. And the last is National Research Fund. I said that this is to some extent because there is some mixing between two funds concerning the voucher scheme. I will put some absolutely brief information concerning this scheme. All of these instruments are running with alliance with two strategies. Strategies for smart specialization, which are being member states absolutely obliged to have, and national strategy for research. Predecessor of these two strategies are several issues of regional innovation strategies. We elaborated 5 regional strategies, and they are really a very good basis for the new S3. Why? Because 3 or 4 priorities are coming of these 3 regional innovation strategies, mainly ICT, biotechnology, and also mechatronics. So starting with the National Innovation Fund, because this is, let's say, one of the main examples like proof of concept, I can say that it started functioning in the beginning of 2000. Up to now, there are several calls, and this fund operates under the previous law on innovation and strategy of innovation, and for the moment, and smart specialization. What is important for this instrument? Instrument supports, of course, small and medium enterprise concerning innovation development. Also, there are a special element of supporting IPR activities, but not too rich, not very generous concerning IPR. The next instrument could be more promisable. Another interesting thing concerning this fund is that this fund operating, giving a chance to both entities, research organization and small and medium enterprises, like a joint scheme. But important is to know that the main beneficiary is small and medium enterprises. Research organization stands behind, supports in the various ways, but the beneficiaries, it's absolutely definitely said that could be small and medium enterprises. Because I'm a rational person, just to say what's the good points and, let's say, weak points of this instrument. Concerning good points, wide portfolio of measures, various measures for small and medium enterprises, part of them, of course, very successful one, part of that not very successful one, but there are such kind of schemes. You can make your choice, you can select where and how. The next good point from my point of view is a good evaluation system. Special pool of evaluators, predominantly researchers, also experts from the business, etc., etc. Because evaluation is my favorite baby, so I could say that especially for me, could be better if this evaluation panel includes international experts. Why? Because all of us were small countries. We know each other very well. We are either semi-brothers or cousins. That's why we need absolutely international side upon real independent side. This could be, let's say, implemented in the OP. I'll say 2 words upon this. And the last good point, and for me a real achievement, is notification concerning state aid. This instrument operates with notification. And this is a really very easy system, because if there is no such kind of notification, each time we have to ask for notification for separate call. Bad or weak points, still very heavy administrative procedures. Too many papers, too long time for assessment, too long time for, let's say, final decision, etc. It's a first. The second is that, how to say, it's a little bit sporadic opening of calls, not very systematic opening of the calls, because this makes some kind of pressure upon the small and medium enterprises. They are expecting that the call is coming, the call very often has been postponed due to one or another reason. And the last one is, again, no clear post-evaluation, ex-post evaluation. For me, it's extremely important. Why? Because we need to have impact assessment in order to design the new call. If there is no this impact assessment, we do nothing. Success rate of this instrument is around 20%, something higher, something less, but normally this is. Successful story. One of them is Firma Solution. They started like one company. For the moment, there are more than 12 companies. They started like beneficiary of National Innovation Fund. After that, they have developed very well, and for the moment, they're attracting sources from Horizon 2020, from Eureka, from another instruments, and another is also this transfer center, who is existing center. Nonetheless, the previous OP funded more than 20 technology transfer centers. Next instrument, this is a new OP. This is a real example of proof and concept. Why? Because this is a second issue of OP. We already completed the first programming period. For the moment, we are in the second programming period. This new OP, supporting, of course, innovation capacity of small and medium enterprises, technology transfer of course, there is a special scheme for supporting of IPR activities. And this scheme is pretty generous, because you know that with let us modest money, there is no way to support this. Another important thing is that this operational program combines the efforts with another operational programs for research and education for smart specialization in the direction of establishing regional research centers. Regional research centers, these are new schemes, not starting yet, but regional research schemes has a main aim to raise regional capacity, innovation capacity, and of course to bettering ecosystem. The good news is that we have envisaged international independent evaluation. And this is a good. Of course, under this OP, there is some discussions, but for the moment only some, for new scheme supporting of business idea. For me, it's excellent if this scheme has been prepared in the fast way and has been performed in the fast way. So we shall see. Concerning IPR issues, I can say that as a result, there are a few patents of all these schemes. Concerning overall situation upon IPR, we consider very much our law on IPR. But in some cases, there is an extra agreement between research organization, all researchers, and small and medium enterprises. It's allowable. Criteria for assessment, and I'll come to conclusions. Criteria for assessment are, of course, quality, team, risk assessment, business plan assessment, everything. Innovation potential and impact. The maximum lump sum for supporting up to now, with exception of regional centers, is around 100,000 euro. So I can't say that everything is ideal, but we really hope that our economy will go ahead and will be a good innovator. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Vucova. Very interesting what is happening in Bulgaria and what has happened with, I think, the experience of the Innovation Fund for sure will give a lot of good content and insight for the future development of this new measure. Any question from the audience? Yep.
When you're talking about OP2 and OP1,
Yeah.
what is exactly?
Both.
When is the time? When is the time of
OP1 was...
Sorry, if you can use the mic.
OP1 was 2007, 2013. And next one, a new one is OP2.
I have one question as well. You mentioned about the Innovation Fund and you mentioned about another large number of measures. As I understand, these were mostly grants. I also understand that in the new programming period there will be financial instruments, or there are already some financial instruments. I know you had a small experience, I think, with Jeremy. And I know in particular when it comes to proof of concept and technology transfer that there is also a discussion, and even more maybe than a discussion, about technology transfer financial instruments. What is your view on that? Is there any lessons from what was done in the Innovation Fund that we could take to set up good instruments in that sense?
So normally Innovation Fund is working on the grant system, but my deeply conviction is that this should be a little bit redesigned, because grant system is more or less push in one direction of full, let's say, safe side. For me, the future is the new financial instruments. OP are designed in the two models. One, grant systems, but another part of the schemes envisages co-financing instrument. Especially OP2. OP1 predominantly worked upon the grant system. Unfortunately, lessons learned from this experience are not very splendid. That's why we have to. That's why we have to rethink the system, and it's good that they have gave us a chance just to update every second year the schemes and the criteria for assessment and also the procedure for performance.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any other question? No? Okay. Well, in that case, with only 3 minutes of delay, I would like to conclude our session. I would like to thank all our speakers. I didn't have to remind them 2 minutes, 1 minute, and I think this is excellent, because it's quite a nuisance, you know, when someone is telling you that. So very good for keeping the time and for the excellent content you provided. I think now the coffee break is next, so enjoy it. Thanks.